Here I am again, he thought. Jerry was bored out of his skull. The 9 months of winter in Chicago was taking its toll. Sweet Jesus, man. It was actually only 3 months of really bad weather so far, but he had extended himself as far as he could go, and now cabin fever had set in. And when I say extended himself, I mean he engaged in any and every distraction he could find. He played video games, watched TV, ordered whole series of shows on Netflix and watched them. He ate when he was bored, but most often he found himself standing in front of the refrigerator, just staring at it, as if it was going to suddenly give him an answer to what he wanted to eat. He took 3 different kinds of sleeping pills in order to knock himself out during the worst of it. He even took a kava root extract. Kava is a plant from the Western Pacific that native cultures used as a tranquilizer. He heard that if you smoked it, it would make your face numb. After a while, none of this helped. Jerry was spiraling into a cycle of misery. Something had to be done. Then he remembered a friend he had some years back. This friend, when he was lost or had a spiritual longing, would go on a type of fast. He would not eat solid foods, only drink juice. But here was the kicker. He would abstain from sleep as well until he had a vision. This is what I'll do, thought Jerry. So he walked to the store and bought a gallon of orange juice and 2 quarts of apple juice. Sally sat atop the hood of the car, looking out over the city. She had driven up to the foothills and parked at a rest area. Now she sat in the cold morning air, reeling from a restless night. This decision was haunting her. Now, her bifurcated self had boiled it down to 2 choices, as it often does. Did you ever wonder why we seem to do that so much? We take decisions and quickly boil them down to 2 options. Either I go to Denver, or I stay in Chicago. Either I ask Jane to marry me, or I move out. Either I get chocolate ice cream, or Oreo fudge. Either I take this job for money, or suffer for my art. Sally concluded that the reason that we do this is due to the fact that we are bifurcated animals. We are symmetrical, in theory, made up of 2 halves, and those halves, while made up into one, often come in conflict with each other. She imagined the 2 halves of her brain with their own voices trying to hash out all of the incoming stimuli. For example, if she walked outside and saw fresh-cut grass, her mind would quickly process it.
Is that grass green? Is that grass green? What else is green? What other things are green? Limes are green, trees are green, fern is green, a wheatgrass shot is green, loogies can be green, my couch is green, my couch is green, that grass is green, that grass is green, yes, it's green, yep, green, green, completely green, green, it's green. She started imagining her brain like this after a chance encounter at a coffee shop. After getting her tea, she had sat down at one of the few empty tables and opened a trashy novel called Desire Island. The cover depicted an airbrushed woman with long flowing red hair. She was collapsing up against the open-shirted barrel chest of some tan, handsome man. They looked to be stuck on some tropical deserted island. Sally had found the book sitting on a dumpster of an alley near her apartment a few days earlier. She had thought it would be deliciously ironic to be seen reading the book in such a pretentious coffee shop, full of greasy intellectuals, dark-clothed, edgy youths, and tight-pant, Converse-wearing, horned-rimmed glasses sporting hipsters, too hip for their own good, and utterly convinced that other people were the hipsters. Sorry, guys, but you're the hipsters. Do you mind if I sit here? A voice said. Sally looked up to see a tall, lanky man in a black trench coat. He had a book bag slung over his shoulder, and he was holding a cup of coffee. Not at all, she said. He sat. He seemed to be around the same age as her, probably in his mid-20s, she thought. He was greasy, had a rather odd-shaped long nose, and not much of a chin. Also, he appeared to be unsuccessfully trying to grow a mustache and goatee. He immediately took the opportunity to chat her up, starting to yammer on about the state of coffee grounds, quickly segueing into some convoluted Marxist rhetoric. Man, she thought, does this guy's Adam's apple move when he talks?
And she was right. It did. And it was big. Real big. It seemed to help push out his stale cigarette coffee breath. Something else about the pheromones he was giving off told her that he must live at his mom's house. She prided herself on her sense of smell. She casually looked behind her at the rest of the coffee shop and saw that it wasn't as busy as she thought. There were at least 3 empty tables. Her chest sunk a little as she turned back around to him, realizing what this meant. He's hitting on me. As she was making this connection, she was startled by him saying, "You know what I mean?" Not having any clue what he meant or what he was saying. Defensively, she picked up her tea and said a positive, just before taking a sip. "And people experience it all the time," he continued. "Have I met this person before? This isn't the first time I've been here. It's déjà vu. And what I'm saying is that half the time, déjà vu is just a lapse in the mind." He could sense that she did not know what he was talking about. "Here," he said, getting excited. He grabbed 2 sugar packets and placed them on the table in front of her. "Imagine these 2 sugar packets as the 2 hemispheres of our brain. Information is constantly coming in from our eyes, traveling past each hemisphere of our brain, and being stored back in our memory cortex. Is that even right?" she thought. "But what happens when one of the hemisphere lapses, just for a millisecond? The information is stored in the memory cortex by one hemisphere, and by the time the other hemisphere catches up, it compares the information to the memory and sees that the event already happened. Half of your mind is thinking, wait a minute, I've seen this before. Déjà vu." "Wow," she said. He saw that this idea pleased her, and congratulated himself at the thought of engaging her in some way. He smiled. "So," he said, changing subjects, "what are you reading?" She lifted the book so that he could see the cover. A disgusted look came over his face. His tone got immediately condescending. "Oh man, you're not serious." And then he went on a diatribe about all the great literature out there, and why would she be reading such drivel? He named many authors, some good, most bad in her opinion, and when he wrote a Tom Wolfe title on a piece of paper, handed it to her, and in a pretentious tone said, "Here, start with this," she physically felt bile at the back of her throat. "Oh!" She stood up. "The Giants game is on in an hour." She meant to finish off the lie with, "My husband is going to be furious if I don't get those hors d'oeuvres ready." But she found herself already halfway to the exit. Not her best work, she thought. I really need to slow down and take my time saying these things. Nothing's worse than walking away from a situation thinking, man, I should have said that.